The story begins in the kingdom of Long Trellis, where the king and queen seem to live a perfect life, except for one tragic flaw. The queen suffers from a rare condition that prevents her from having children, and this constant sorrow consumes her. The king desperately summons the greatest physicians across the land, but none can cure her mysterious infertility. Hoping to lift her spirits, the king invites a troupe of circus performers to the castle. However, when the queen spots a pregnant performer, her jealousy takes over, and she angrily destroys the objects in her room. Heartbroken for his wife, the king promises he will do absolutely anything to give her a child. Late that night, a mysterious sorcerer arrives at the castle, claiming he holds the cure. Though the king is skeptical, the sorcerer insists that the queen can bear a child, but it requires a dark price. Magic demands balance, he explains, meaning a life must be sacrificed to create a new one. The king agrees to go to any length. The sorcerer tells him he must slay a specific sea monster, extract its heart, and have it cooked by a pure, unmarried maiden. Once the queen eats the prepared heart, she will conceive. Without hesitation, the king puts on his armor and ventures into the deep waters to face the slumbering beast. A brutal battle ensues, and though the king manages to kill the creature, he is mortally wounded. With his dying breaths, he cuts out the monster's heart. The queen brings the massive heart back to the castle, and a young, pure maid is assigned to cook it. As the maid prepares the strange meat, the magical fumes wash over her, and she instantly becomes pregnant. The queen then consumes the cooked heart and also conceives. Months later, both the queen and the maid give birth to baby boys on the exact same day. The two infants look completely identical, sharing a striking, unnatural white hair color tied to the sea monster's magic. The queen names her son Elias, and the maid names hers Jonah. 16 years pass, and the boys grow into young men. The queen is overjoyed with Elias, feeling she was granted a miracle. However, Elias and Jonah share an unbreakable, mystical bond, acting more like twin brothers than a prince and a servant. The queen despises this friendship. She constantly reminds Elias that a royal heir should not associate with a peasant, but Elias completely ignores her. The boys even share a supernatural ability to breathe underwater. Growing desperate, the queen threatens to banish the maid and Jonah if they do not stay away from the prince. Undeterred, the boys continue to meet in secret. One day, Jonah decides to wear Elias's royal clothes and walks right up to the queen. Enraged by this trick, she officially exiles Jonah from the kingdom. Elias tries to stop his friend from leaving, but fails. Before departing, Jonah stabs his knife into a tree trunk, causing a magical spring of water to flow. He tells Elias that as long as the water is clear, he is safe, but if it ever turns red, it means his life is in mortal danger. Elias checks the spring every day. Eventually, the water turns blood red. Panicking, he leaves the kingdom in secret to rescue his friend. After a long journey, Elias arrives at a village and finds Jonah's house, where a young woman mistakes him for her husband due to their identical faces. She tells Elias that Jonah ventured into the dark forest 5 days ago and never returned. Elias immediately heads into the woods. Meanwhile, the queen realizes her son is gone and falls into a deep panic. She summons the sorcerer once more, begging for Elias's safe return. The sorcerer coldly reminds her of the rule, a life for a life. The queen accepts the terms. Deep in the forest, Jonah is trapped in a cave, bleeding and under attack from a vicious flying monster. Hearing his screams, Elias charges into the cave and slays the beast with his sword, saving his friend. What Elias does not realize is that the monster was actually his own mother, transformed and sacrificed to fulfill the magical pact. With the queen dead, Elias returns home and ascends the throne as the new king. In a neighboring kingdom, a completely different ruler spends his days indulging in lust and alcohol. This king is incredibly wealthy and powerful, but has never settled down with a queen. He spends all his time surrounded by women. Just outside the palace walls live two elderly, unmarried sisters named Dora and Emma. They are impoverished and wrinkled with age, rarely leaving their small home. However, their singing voices have somehow remained incredibly sweet and youthful. One morning, the king hears Dora singing through the window and is instantly captivated. Assuming she is a beautiful young maiden, he knocks on their door. The sisters panic, terrified that the cruel king will execute them if he sees their old, wrinkled faces. Thinking quickly, Dora speaks through the door and asks the king to return in exactly 1 week, claiming she needs time to prepare herself. The sisters spend the entire week frantically trying to make their hands look youthful enough to show the king. Dora tries wrapping her fingers in herbs, but it does nothing. Emma, however, sucks on her finger continuously for days, and miraculously, the skin becomes smooth and plump. When the king finally returns, Dora sticks Emma's youthful finger through the keyhole. The king is overwhelmed with desire and begs to be with her. Fearing discovery, Dora agrees to sleep with him, but only on the strict condition that his bedchamber is kept in absolute pitch-black darkness. The king eagerly agrees. That night, the sisters use glue and tight bindings to pull Dora's loose skin back, attempting to mimic a young woman's body. Under the cover of total darkness, a guard escorts Dora into the king's bed. The deception works at first, but when the morning light eventually creeps into the room, the king wakes up to find an elderly, wrinkled woman sleeping beside him. Furious and disgusted, he orders his guards to throw Dora out of the high castle window. Miraculously, Dora's fall is broken by the dense branches of the forest below, and she survives. As she lies in the woods, a mysterious witch discovers her and uses powerful magic to transform Dora into a stunningly beautiful young woman with long, vibrant hair. The very next day, the king happens to be hunting in that same forest. He spots the transformed Dora, falls instantly in love, and brings her back to the castle to make her his queen, completely unaware that she is the same woman he tried to kill. Dora invites her sister Emma to the royal wedding. Emma is utterly bewildered by Dora's youthful appearance and begs to know her secret. Not wanting to reveal the witch's magic, Dora jokingly claims that she simply had her old skin peeled off. Tragically, the simple-minded Emma takes this literally. She finds a local ironsmith and trades a valuable necklace, demanding he flay her skin. The foolish blacksmith takes her to the woods, ties her to a tree, and peels her skin away. Emma stumbles back to the castle a bloody mess and quickly dies from her wounds. Meanwhile, the witch's magic proves to be temporary. During a royal procession, Dora realizes her skin is beginning to sag and wrinkle again. Terrified of the king's wrath, she flees the castle and runs into the wilderness, fully transforming back into an old woman, destined to live out her days alone. In a third kingdom, a highly eccentric king lives with his daughter, Violet. The king is a neglectful father who cares little for his daughter. One afternoon, he discovers a strange, parasitic flea feeding on his arm. Instead of killing it, he becomes fascinated, placing it in a glass box and secretly feeding it his own blood every single day. Under his care, the parasite grows to the size of a large dog. Violet, who has grown into a young woman, dreams of leaving the castle and finding a loving husband. But her father ignores her wishes, completely obsessed with his giant pet insect. Eventually, the massive parasite falls ill and dies. The king is heartbroken. He carefully skins the creature and decides to use the massive hide for a bizarre contest, telling Violet that it is finally time for her to marry. The king hangs the giant, leathery skin in the Great Hall and announces that any suitor who can correctly identify the creature it belonged to will win Princess Violet's hand in marriage. Many nobles and scholars travel from far and wide, but none can guess the answer, as a flea has never grown to such a monstrous size. Just as the king thinks no one will solve it, a terrifying, grotesque ogre enters the palace. The king is repulsed, but cannot stop him from participating. The ogre steps up, takes one sniff of the hide, and correctly identifies it. Violet is absolutely horrified and runs to the highest tower, threatening to jump rather than marry a monster. Her father coldly pulls her back, stating that a king cannot break his royal decree. She is forced to leave with the ogre. The ogre takes Violet far away to his filthy cave high in the treacherous mountains, where she spends her days weeping. One afternoon, while the monster is out hunting, Violet spots a family walking along a distant mountain pass. She screams for help, explaining her dreadful situation. The family takes pity on her and promises to return with a rope. The next morning, they arrive and attempt to help Violet cross the deep ravine. Just as she makes it across, the ogre returns. The family quickly cuts the rope bridge, sending the furious ogre plummeting into the gorge. However, the monster survives the fall. He tracks down the kind family and brutally murders every single one of them. He then corners Violet in a cave. Pretending to accept her fate, Violet lets the ogre embrace her, but the moment his guard is down, she pulls a hidden knife and slits his throat, finally killing him. Covered in dirt and blood, Violet returns to her father's castle carrying the ogre's severed head. She drops it on the floor in front of the stunned court, crying out that this was the husband her father chose for her. The king, overwhelmed with guilt and horror at what his foolishness has caused, falls to his knees in despair. Violet stands tall amidst the silence, finally claiming control over her own destiny as the new ruler of the kingdom.